Hello there and welcome back to the video channel that is Craig's Critique. I have been out of the game for quite a while in terms of making these video reviews, but I'm come back here for an end of year review of 2018 of the films I have seen, and I do want to share with you what my favourite 10 films of the year have been. I always emphasise that word favourite because they are favourites, and these are my personal choices. I will mainly positively talk about these 10 films and the things I like. There's always going to be something that is always not quite always up to scratch, even in the films that are really good. But I'm going to say why these are my 10 favourite films of the past year. So this year I have been to the cinema. I have 60 cinema trips. A couple of them, though, are sort of older films. I had a total of 54 new cinematically released films that I have seen. So once again, I have a good breadth of variety of the different types of films on offer in our UK cinemas. It's not quite up to what I've done previously in years, where I've got over 60. But hey ho, I roll with the punches and I see what I can, and I have 54 films that I've picked 10 from, which are my favourite. And I'm going to start by talking about how these two lots of films, and I say two lots of films because they're coming into, it's been such a clear category sort of divide this year: prestige films and blockbuster films. It's never been quite so clear previously on some of my lists, where I've had some quirky indie films, but they really have come up trumps properly in terms of the quality aspects of the prestige films, like I say, and the big blockbuster films. So the first one I want to talk about is the animation area, really. And I'm going to start with one of the earliest films this year, which was Coco. And this was a film, obviously, from Disney and Pixar, about the Festival of the Dead and a young boy basically trying to find his love of music. He ends up in the Festival of the Dead, and it's quite an emotional film. From initially viewing it is a beautiful film, it's beautifully animated, but what's most important about it is the story regarding the young boy and the emotional journey it goes on. And it is one of those, once again, where Pixar they're knocking it out of the park in terms of the quality of animation to storytelling. I've been on off with Pixar, I will say, in the last sort of couple of years. Inside Out, I thought, was their last previously great film. They've had some okay films, but this has been a very good year for them, and I think Coco in particular is a great film. The second one I want to talk about is The Incredibles 2. Now, this was a film that I think I came in with, okay, we've had quite a few Disney Pixar sequels now, and none of them have really lived up to anything of what Toy Story 2 and 3 have been able to do for the industry and their own sort of catalogue of work. We've had Finding Dory, we've had Monsters University, we've had Cars, unfortunately. I'm heavy harsh there. But Incredibles 2 was an interesting one, and The Incredibles is an interesting film for me, the first one, because I have always thought that it's a really good film. It's a great film, but it wasn't quite there all the time, up there on the interest stakes. I don't mean that as a negative. It was more of a spectacle film rather than an emotional journey a lot of the time, although there is little things going on in that film. But I thought this was a film, actually, where, maybe because I had those sort of opinions to begin with on the first one, where I actually think this is a film punching way above its weight. Mr. Incredible would appreciate that joke. And I thought it was, not only was it funny, it was, again, obviously a direct continuation of the films of the previous film. I mean, it literally carries on from the last scene of the first film. That's very unusual for particularly a sequel of sorts, just to go, right, let's do it exactly from the moment we left that last one. So I think it handles the family interaction brilliantly. It carries on those character arcs that were interesting to begin with, but actually takes them further. And it obviously began the story. It's a bit about Mrs. Incredible. Is the Frozone and Mr. and Mr. Incredible are approached by an entrepreneur, and they end up wanting to bring back superheroes, as they make superheroes legally, because of course they're still illegal technically after that first film, which is why it probably helps them being so close together. So we get this actual progression in terms of seeing what results from the first to the second film, and then therefore the actions of those said films. That made no sense, but never mind. But it's about effectively them sort of trying to bring superheroes back again. Now, like I say, I think the action scenes are fantastic. They're brilliantly animated. They're exhilarating films. The score is as wonderful as ever. The comedy is just bloody great. I'm being very positive here about everything I'm talking about. But yeah, I think it was just a truly, truly, truly very entertaining film, and I honestly think it's, again, this is another year I think where Pixar have had 2 films in the same year, and they very rarely do that. And like I say, I don't think their annual output has been as great as it could have been. They've been okay. There's not been any sort of there's no terrible pictures possibly in the Pixar wheelhouse, if you will, the Disney wheelhouse. You could argue about some films being worse than others and disappointing, but I don't think they are terrible. Maybe Cars 2 is the only one up for debate. But I thought it does an extremely good job, particularly to have such 2 differently stylized films with different motives and approaching things still to do with emotional family storytelling, but just in different genres and in a different way. Wonderful. I think it was a greatly entertaining film. So yeah, Incredibles 2. So those are the sort of the big animation staples this year. The other sort of genre, I'm just going to be a proper hard left turn, or hard right turn, into a genre that probably, it became a blockbuster hit, but it's not a blockbuster film. And that is the horror film A Quiet Place. It's been an interesting year for horror, I do believe, and A Quiet Place in particular was one that I'd heard a lot of buzz of it going up prior to seeing it, and there's a lot of naysayers in regards to the horror genre, and that's because that's potentially even from people within the genre itself. That's because it's almost like every generation goes, well, they're not as scary as the previous generation's horror films. They're not meant to be. They're meant to be scary in a different way, and that's exactly what, again, this year's horror film has presented to us. And I think A Quiet Place is it caught the imagination of an audience, and the reason why I say that is because I go to cinema, like I say, a lot, and audience interaction with films is always fascinating and sometimes frustrating for myself. Usually, in particular, with regards to sort of certain films where I think the audience is not, I'm being very, very harsh here, but the attention is not on the film. This is a film that demands your attention incredibly so. Just from the whole, the way they set up the film. So basically, the plot, first of all, it's directed by John Krasinski, the actor from The Office, and he's also been in many other films. He is a husband, and he's actually in the film. He's a husband to his actual real life wife, Emily Blunt, who and they have a couple of kids in this film. One of whom who is deaf and has to have a hearing aid in order to help her sort of hear, obviously. No more to go into there, really. But it is obviously a sort of think of sort of a zombie apocalypse sort of scenario where something has gone down in regards to some creatures have suddenly took over this world. And you meet the John Krasinski and Emily Blunt family unit, and they are going through a abandoned town where everything is absolutely deadly silent, and there's a great emphasis on not making any noise, basically because these creatures are attracted by noise. It's such a simple premise that is so extremely well executed. And because of this, the premise alone, that is a premise, like I say, that demands audience respect. And the showing I went on a day as well, I think, where it wasn't you get certain days where you get audiences that are louder than others, put it that way. Some pay attention more, some don't. This is a film that, even on the night where I went to, where I think it was more of a casual movie-going audience rather than sort of people who go to the cinema a lot, were absolutely transfixed by this film. And you daren't move in that cinema. You daren't make a single sound in that cinema because you respected the film and the job the film did so much that it not only is it one of my cinematic experiences of the year, quite a few of these are, but it suddenly, maybe, I'm hoping it would have then put onto certain people, possibly like this is what cinema's about. It's creating that connection, and hopefully this sort of film does that. So it uses its simple premise extremely well. It has some great tension. It's got some brilliant tense scenes in this film. Some great performances, like I say. The way they use the sound, brilliant. Yeah, I thought it was a great entry into the horror genre. So yeah, that was A Quiet Place. So I will go into. I'm going to briefly step aside from some of the sort of more bigger, like I say, the blockbuster side of the success of this year, and I'm going to go into more of the critical side. And then because obviously the way the UK, unfortunately our UK releases work, is that a lot of the critically acclaimed films of 2017 that will have been released in America, we only get them at the very beginning of of 2018. In January and February, so we get a lot of those Oscar, BAFTA nominees coming to us quite a bit later than like I say in America, and so therefore we got in particular pretty much this. I've got 3 films on this list basically that are from this Oscar cycle of 2018, that won or so awards. So this is not something that's coming after the fact. I saw these films obviously before they got their awards and so on and so forth. But the one I'm going to start with is the big one, and that is The Shape of Water. Now, this film has an interesting. It obviously got the great critical reaction from the critics, but it's also got an interesting sort of backlash to it as well. And it's an interesting. Because I saw this film twice at the cinema, and it's interesting when you go to see a film for a second time in certain situations where you go. I think you got it exactly right in terms of my first impressions of it. And the thing that I think worked most for me was that it showed the love of film. And my love of film in regards to that as well, it almost... Guillermo del Toro, the director, this is obviously effectively a fairy tale love story, fantasy love story. And as we all know, it's a story about basically a creature from the Black Lagoon sort of creature, basically falling in love with a deaf protagonist again, played by, oh my god, I can't remember her name. I'm so sorry. But yeah, and the premise alone, everyone, you hear the premise, and you see some of the imagery, and it gets a lot of sort of really that. It's winning awards. That's garnering critical attention. I bought it. I'm sorry. I absolutely bought the feeling of it. I thought it was majestic in the way it sort of portrayed a lot of its sort of story thematics. There is certain things that maybe don't need to be in there. That's fine. But I thought the whole actual love, the way that Del Toro, he can dress a scene. Oh my word, he can shoot a film. You can go into whether all his films work or not, but whatever you can say about Del Toro, it looks fantastic. It looks amazing, and it's no surprise that he won pretty much every production design award going at the time. It's a brilliantly looking film. It's a wonderfully performed film. It's got a great score. It's a wonderful score. It's so... the word is majestic for me, and the reason why is because not many people will go along with this sort of film, and I understand. I can appreciate where it gets some of those sort of like, yeah, not for me, I'm afraid. But like I say, there's certain things he knows how to use the visual medium of cinema. I think Del Toro. I think he has done better films, and so it's all. But how many films have won Oscars that they're not the best works of those directors? I mean, you could do a whole video on it alone, couldn't you? Really. So I think it's a wonderful film. I thought it's some wonderful performance, great effects. I just got swept up in that film completely. So I did love The Shape of Water. Second film on this sort of critical acclaim category is Phantom Thread. And again, now this is one that I went to see this film alone. I'll be straight out with that. Because it's a film you can't sell to many people, let alone some company and such. But it was a film I thought, I want to see this film. It was more a completionist sort of reaction for me, because I like to see usually all the Oscar nominees. I probably, again, on the description of the film, would have gone, I don't probably have much interest in that film, but I saw it out of critical obligation, put it that way. The film basically centres on a British dress designer played by Daniel Day-Lewis. This is a film directed by Paul Thomas Anderson. Paul Thomas Anderson is a director I have been extremely... If I get it, I get it off him. If I don't, I'm not in there at all. He's just got something, when he's on it, I think he does some great stuff, and other stuff I think, it's not terrible. It's maybe not even fine, it's pretty alright, but I just don't quite buy into it as much as some other stuff. But for me, Phantom Thread, who would have thought that the dressmaking film, the story of a man and his obsession with creation, it's basically, it's a film about art appreciation, not of art appreciation, the appreciation of creating art, or what do you go through in order to create it, and things like that. We've had many films like this, haven't we? But not quite in this sort of style, or in this tone, or even in this. Well, the setting alone is set in, I think it's like 1950s, late 40s, Britain. Like I say, he's British design. He designs dresses for all the upper classes, basically, even royalty from other countries. I think it's a Scandinavian country in particular he makes a dress for it in this film. But what is most interesting is his relationship with his sister, his relationship with his industry, and his relationship with a woman who at first he meets at a breakfast, bed and breakfast, who's a waitress basically, and it's that relationship that unfolds in terms of him creating things for her, and then her sort of being involved with his life. This is a very hard film to describe, as you can probably tell from my description. I just think it's a fascinating film. Johnny Greenwood from Radiohead, of course, did the score for this film. It's a wonderful score. It's shot brilliantly. Daniel Day-Lewis's performance is exceptional. I think everything about this film, I just couldn't take my eyes off it, which is kind of, I think, the point of him and his creation of the dresses. You can't take your eyes off the dresses and such. So there's definitely through line in terms of what the director's going for all those characters and to make you become involved with those characters. So yeah, I think it's got some amazing work going on directorially, like I say. He knows how to shoot certain things. This is a funny film as well, and this is going to sound really weird given what I've described. This is a funny film from its script in terms of the interactions between, particularly Daniel Day-Lewis and his sister, who again, I apologise, I can't remember the actress who plays the sister in the film, because they live together basically. But they have certain scenes around a breakfast table that I just absolutely laugh out loud funny, and in particular also when he's also coming in interrupting other things to do with his sister and such like that. This is a funny film, but it's not a comedy, but it has extremely coarse and cutting funny moments because of the film it creates, and then sort of then goes suddenly, but it feels natural because of what you've seen from that character previous in the film. I think it's a wonderful film, Phantom Thread, and I've not met anybody else who has seen this film. And I can say from the premise you go, again, not many people would want to see it, but I think it's a beautifully fascinating portrayal of obsession of creation. So there we go, Phantom Thread. And the third film in my of the critically acclaimed films was the 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. Now this is a dark comedy drama focuses on Frances McDormand, who effectively is, her daughter was killed, and there's been never any sort of justice for what had happened to her daughter, basically. So she sets up these 3 billboards, basically to sort of pester the local sheriff into action, basically. Played by Woody Harrelson. There's also a character in his department played by Sam Rockwell, who's basically a racist cop. This film is this is probably the best portrayal of society now that I've seen in terms of how it reacts to things and how it portrays society. People react to things in time. They don't wait for things. They react in time to things, whether it's good or bad. And this film portrays that. Performances are all around fantastic. Frances McDormand deservedly won an Oscar. Sam Rockwell deservedly won an Oscar. as well as for best supporting actor. Woody Harrelson is wonderful as well. There's a wonderful narration a lot of the time by Woody Harrelson as well. So again, it's a beautifully witty written script. And again, there's some certain shots that are fantastic to. There's a lot of character following shots that are brilliantly done. I just think it is a wonderful, wonderful film. Yeah, so that's Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. So I'm going to go into my sort of other critically acclaimed film of this year, but it's now going to be on this. This film will be on the 2019 Oscar slate, basically for February, end of February, beginning of March, is it? And that is A Star Is Born. Now, yeah, that's right. The Lady Gaga, Bradley Cooper, not musical, but it's a musical drama, isn't it? Basically, so there's a lot of newly written songs for. Basically, this is a previously told story, as we all know. The Star Is Born. This is like the fourth incarnation, I do believe, of this story. Basically, it's about an aging musician. This time played by Bradley Cooper, who is directing this, isn't his directorial debut. What a debut, I will say that, in terms of his first piece of directorial work. This is the sort of role that had been previously played in the last incarnation of it was played by Chris Christopherson in the 70s version, and the female lead was played by Barbra Streisand at the time. So she was her version this time is Lady Gaga. She's a singer who's working the gay clubs. There's a lot of transgender clubs and things like that in America. She works sort of a dead-end job. She works at a hotel, basically. And you know, that whole story of working a terrible job but having a wonderful passion in your private life. Well, Bradley Cooper, of course, wanders into a bar, spots her, goes, she looks like something special. Again, not new at all, but what makes the film work so well, and in a year where we've had quite a few musical biopics, basically, as well. Bohemian Rhapsody, I'm looking at you. I thought this was the best portrayal of not a music industry, but a story, how to tell a story within the music industry, basically, and how, like I say, this peaks and troughs with its individual working within it. Bradley Cooper plays the aging rock star brilliantly, and Lady Gaga does a wonderful job, and obviously, we know she's got the singing down. It's not even about that. It's about the emotion in it, and if whether that then emotional from the story works itself into the songs. My God, does it do that? That is one soundtrack I bought. Brilliantly written songs. It's got standout, spine-tingling moments in those musical set pieces. So we all kind of know where the story's going to go, you probably know from just listening to my description of this story. Like I say, he's on the come down, she's on the rise. So conflict is obviously going to happen, but it's how then convincingly they sort of tell that story between those characters, and they do such good job in the performances, and generally most of the time on the writing as well. I thought it was a great film. A predictable film, many would say, but I thought everything about it was just done to a great T. So Star Is Born is also one of my 10 favourite films of 2018. Now, how many have we done now here? We've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them, my 10. So we've got 3 left to go. So let's go into... Oh, dear me. Sorry about that. One I will go into now is actually one that I should have included in my animation area earlier on. And the reason why... This is not a late addition to my favourite films of 2018, but it's one I had the most apprehension of putting on. And only in one part it's because I've only seen it within the last month, last 3 weeks in fact, and that is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Now I will start off by saying why I had the apprehension of putting it on. It's not because it's not a good film. My apprehension was the short space of time in which I have seen it. Although that hasn't stopped me putting things on previous lists. It's also about obviously your initial reaction to something. I've only seen this film once, and my initial reaction was that was so visually engrossing. I almost couldn't appreciate sometimes. I think a lot of what was going on. That sounds really weird then to include on my best films of the year list, but I get that absolute feeling that when I see that for a second or even a third time, my appreciation is only going to rise, basically. So obviously we all know the story of Spider-Man, and basically what this film sets up is an animated film, of course, like I say, and it sets up all your obviously, as I have no comic book history at all. Basically, it sets up a Spider-Verse where basically there's lots of different versions of Spider-Man in the comics, and it brings them all crashing into one film. There's a device that effectively makes all these characters cross into each other's verses, and therefore they have to deal with each other. And yet, given that Spider-Man, you know what, it is probably, I've always liked Spider-Man, and I've always genuinely liked most of the films. But what the film does best is showing how that character can actually work extremely well in so many different genres, to have so many different interpretations. I will even say, like, even just looking at the three, it even makes a point of like looking at sort of like the three cinematic interpretations of Spider-Man as well, briefly. But even in those sort of cinematic interpretations, you can see quite a significant difference between all those three characters. Even though they're all in particular obviously the three cinematic ones where they're playing Peter Parker. This is not my area at all. I have friends who are better at looking at this subject than me, but it does an amazing job at showing how that character and that story setup generally can work so well in, like I say, in so many different genres. Animation style, and this is where you've got to just go straight away. Unfortunately, you can talk about the story, and I think it's an interesting. It's generally not a generic story, but you kind of got to beat that bad guy, stop that bad thing happening, so on and so forth. But what's the most interesting is all these characters interacting with each other, and the animation style that accompanies it. Because there was a lot of talk regarding, obviously, like when they were creating this film, they wanted to. It said a lot about a lot of films. Sin City is the prime one, isn't it? That film, Sin City, looked like the comic book. It looked like the comic book. I have read all those comics. It looked like the film. It felt like the film. This is a film that feels like it has been ripped straight off the comic book page. The visual style, at first I was a little bit, whoa, what's going on here in terms of some of the visuals, because I saw it in non-3D and I thought, is this not quite working because I'm not seeing it in 3D, and the way sort of they put sort of objects on the screen behind and in front of each other looked like they were almost like, I should have seen this in 3D. I think I would probably appreciate in 3D, but it's a deliberate thing to make you sort of observe things within scenes and focus on characters and as such more. Basically, because that's the whole thing why you want to focus. That's what comic book panels do all the time. You want you to focus on the character. It's not about what's going on around it. It's about what they're saying, what they're doing. It is so wonderful that in terms of the animation visually, that I think you need to watch this maybe 3 or 4 times to fully appreciate how good it is. I think it definitely deserves to be up there in terms of being nominated for all like the best animated features and stuff. And Incredibles 2 will be coming into that category as well. Coco was a previous year, so that won't be sort of this 2019, early 2019 Oscars and BAFTA nominations. But just alone on the technical feat of it alone, I thought it was exceptional. It's extremely funny as well. I will say I did want a little bit more character interaction in terms of where the general character interplay occurred, or how long we got with them. We got certain bits for a bit, but then we got little things thrown in later on, and I thought, if only we had a little bit more. But because of the nature of this film and the way it leaves you, there's so much potential to where it could go. So I thought it was an exceptionally entertaining film. Yeah, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. So I'm going to go into my final 2 films now. Is it final 2 films? Yes, it is final 2. Now I'm probably leaving the biggest and bolshiest 2 till last. Just yeah, so there we go. So I'm going to go with Mission Impossible Fallout. Now this is talking about, what was it? I was talking about something about peaks and troughs early on. Always regard to Star is Born in terms of obviously a star on the up, a star on the down, and pop stars and rock stars, how they peak and go down, like I say, peaks and troughs. The Mission Impossible franchise, wow, that is a peak and trough series, isn't it? Because I've watched all of them. I have watched them all in order. I have pretty much had different reactions to pretty much all of them. First one, pretty alright. Yeah. Second one, pretty much dour. Never want to watch that film again. Third one, kind of forgettable, if okay. And then we had, for me, what was the most entertaining up until this point, Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, which was Brad Bird, who directed Incredibles 2, linking right there. Then we had Mission Impossible Ghost not good. We had Ghost Protocol, which was, for me, like I say, was the most visually interesting and most astounding, again, in terms of Tom Cruise stunts and such. Then we had Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, which again sort of, I don't think it pulled back a bit, but the stunts were not quite exactly where I thought I wanted them to be, but it was still pretty entertaining. But now we have here Mission Impossible Fallout. Now this is a film you do have to have seen, at least the last one, I think, Rogue Nation. Although the way they sort of structure the film is interesting, because I think they put things in there that you can appreciate if you have seen all the film. I mean, all of them. There's some sort of reference to something at some point to each, sort of to get a particular appreciation for certain moments in those films. But if you don't know those particular little moments, it's not going to generally affect your enjoyment of the film. Because, my word, again, this is another film I saw twice this year, and I don't think I've been as entertained for such a long period of time. Each Mission Impossible film, I think I've talked about this before, it has its standout stunts. You can maybe go, that's the one, or that's the two. Usually there's only one or two that you go, that's exceptional. Even in Mission Impossible 2, where it's such a, I think it's a terrible film, but it has at least one or two stunts you go, that was pretty damn impressive. This is a film that has at least 4, 5, maybe even 6 sequences of action, stunt set pieces or fight scenes that you want to just keep watching again and again and again. In particular, there's a bathroom scene of a fight with Tom Cruise and Henry Cavill, and there's also the jumping out the airplane scene just before that in the film. There's the chase around Paris streets on the motorbike with Tom Cruise. The breaking the villain out of the police van, basically. That's a wonderful scene. There's obviously I don't want to keep talking, but there's the chase. There's the chase scene over London rooftops. Amazing. Again, we all know what happened with that sort of sequence in regards to Tom Cruise. They had to shut down production for at least a couple of months, didn't they? Because he broke his. Didn't break his ribs. He did something extremely. He broke something. I think he broke his ankle or something like that. And every time you watch that scene where they kept that scene in, basically, where he broke his ankle, I think. And no, not I think. I know they kept the scene in. And every time you watch it, you wince because you know it's actually happening, and that's the beauty of this film, and therefore now the beauty of these Mission Impossible films, isn't it? As much as we all love a good old CGI battle, and they can be visually sound, and I'll be talking probably a bit more about that in my last film. What they've got so perfectly down, Mission Impossible, right now, anyway. Christopher McQuarrie is the director, by the way. He did continue on from Rogue Nation. Is those stunts, and Tom Cruise not just willingness to do them, but willingness to perfect them. They're outstanding. They are cinematic level outstanding. They are an art form in honor of themselves. The problem that the fact that there's no sort of appreciation just for stunt work alone is astonishing. I don't think, in terms of the industry, there's a lot of arguments to be had of whether if you award something to some people do think more dangerous, but they're doing them now anyway. And there's then no appreciation for what these people are putting themselves through. Tom Cruise would probably flipping win it every year, but never mind. It would be justified most of the time. But I think this was pure cinema escapism, pure popcorn film. This is a film of 2 hours and 20 minutes. It does not let up. It does not let up. The character, like I said, the way they weave in particular things from the stories on the previous films works really well, and the things that they weave in have poignance to the story. And those characters in particular, obviously Tom Cruise's character, but even to the other supporting characters. So obviously you've got returning people of Ving Rhames and Simon Pegg, basically. And other characters as well, which I will not go into because it spoils aspects of the film. It's a wonderful film. It's so entertaining. If you've not watched it, I don't know what you want me to tell you to do. Just watch this flipping film. There we go. Mission Impossible Fallout. How they top that, I have no idea. Talking about films. Now, this is a segue. Talking about films. In which, how can you top that? The final film of my 10 favourite films of 2018. of course, is Avengers Infinity War. Now, how do you talk about this film without spoiling it? You can. So, if you've not seen it, again, so what? So what? Everybody has probably seen it by now anyway. My apprehension going into this film was I had made quite known to quite a few people. And I thought Marvel, up until this sort of maybe late last year, where we had a little bit of a slight revival of terms of interesting things for myself as a film watcher and this MCU watcher. I had gotten into a position of, oh, they're all very entertaining. Yep, definitely all very entertaining. But where are these characters and storylines going exactly? I need something more for them to be constantly at death's door, to actually have the threat. You've then got to follow up on the threat to actually make it a threat to be apprehensive about and watching these films and the thrill of these films. So, which is why last year they went, I think, slightly more comedic, to sort of take away. Sort of, obviously, you had Spider-Man, Homecoming, and you had Thor Ragnarok, and early this year as well, we had obviously Black Panther. Now, I actually saw Black Panther and I thought it was pretty entertaining again, but I did actually feel again it went back into that sort of not safe Marvel mode, because but we know where we are Marvel mode. We know exactly what we're doing here, and we're setting something up. And obviously, I was a little apprehensive, and like I say, going into Avengers Infinity War, like, well, they've got to do something. I was talking about, they've got to kill somebody off. They've got to kill someone off properly. They've got to make the meaning of all these films worthy of our attention, and therefore the emotional heft. Oh boy. They did it, and I think they did it with great aplomb. The reason why this film works so well, and after all my bitching about all these films playing it safe and taking their time sometimes, it works because they've took their time with these character storylines, and it's all come together for this film. And I don't think there could be any greater compliment than that for what project they've undertaken and achieved personally. You can even at the end of this film go, oh, okay, they've done that, but they've got to follow up still with how they're going to react to it, which is fair enough. That's fair enough from a critical point of view, a more professional critic point of view. But from a pure spectacle and fan point of view, I thought it did things extremely well. It weaved characters. So I'm not telling the storyline, because we all know the storyline. Basically, obviously, Thanos is coming around to get the Infinity Stones to, wipe out half of the universe's life, basically, because he thinks basically that life is overrun what means we have, basically, and he's seen it happen on his own planet. So, great performance by Josh Brolin, wonderful and subtle in moments, but then epic at other times you need him to be. You understand the character. As much as he's a homicidal maniac, you understand to a degree what the point he's making. It's a point worth making, then your homicidal tendencies take over. But it's an understandable villain. Again, just where Marvel are finally getting some good villains. We've had 3 great villains in Spider-Man Homecoming and Black Panther, and now in Infinity War. That was one of the criticisms I had previously as well. You needed to make villains that were not sympathetic, but you understood them at least, basically. And they have done that with wonderful aplomb again. Great villain. Great action set pieces. Great visuals. Such great character interplay. Because again, this is the moment where you get everybody, pretty much everybody. But you get to see people reacting with other people you've not seen before. Obviously, there's proper tension between like Stark and Doctor Strange, which is interesting to see, because I always thought there was such similar characteristics between them. If they ever were to meet, they had to rub up against each other so significantly, and they did. Those characters' arcs that have been built between Iron Man and Spider-Man, between obviously even in places where I did not think they would come to be quite emotional, in terms of those final moments of interaction between certain characters. There's characters, like I say, the ones you expect. I expected to have reactions to sort of like Gamora and Star-Lord's relationship. Even definitely to Spider-Man and Iron Man's relationship as well. Where I didn't expect to see it as much as well is, first of all, is Vision and Scarlet Witch. Wow, where the hell did that sort of come from? I thought that was done really well. in terms of my reaction to it anyway. I thought they've not sold anything to make me believe them as a relationship, but suddenly I got quite... I bought again into that storyline, basically. But the one that is the most important, and therefore we probably would have hinged on this moment, is Gamora, and obviously because Gamora is a child of Thanos. Gamora and Thanos' relationship, because we've only had the interaction between them off screen, and her talking about him, and because even just those little sown seeds of you've gained an aspect of their relationship that even though you've not seen it, you just from that description alone and the way it's performed, I've got that feeling incredibly well. So many great... They don't want to do that, are they? Moments? No. Really? Oh, yeah, of course, yeah. Wow. Okay, they've done that. There's even moments where you go, well, he can't die, even though you know he's not going to die. But the way they sort of effectively even just get the reaction out of you is beyond impressive. I'm going to spoil it. The moment, obviously, in Infinity War where Thanos stabs Tony Stark, the whole cinema went... And remember, these are all people who have seen these films and pretty much know Iron Man is unkillable as a character. And even going in, I was like, they're not going to kill him off. And even while I'm watching, they're not going to kill him off. And even though I was probably, as I was watching that moment, they weren't going to kill him, it created that reaction from an audience. And you've got to just go, well done. You've got that reaction because of your extremely well played interweaving of all these character storylines and just your cinematic prowess. I mean, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. It's so worthy of its position on everyone's top 10 list, to be honest. It should be. It's even turning around some critics who have been a bit more sort of funny about it, and even they did say, yes, you have to have seen the other films, but because you've seen the other films, it's so amazing. So it's wonderful. Avengers: Infinity War. There we go. That's my final film on my list of 2018 films. My favourite 2018 films of this year. So yeah, quite significant films on there. I will just very briefly mention some. I'll do some honourable mentions of films that didn't quite make my list, and on another year maybe where there's such a high quality of the proper high quality awards nominees and stuff wasn't that high. It was so high it made it hard to beat them. And in the blockbuster states of like Mission Impossible and Avengers and Incredibles and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and Coco, and even quite became a blockbuster. On another year, these sort of more Indian on traditional horror films or even smaller animated films would have made it onto my list. So films like, for example, Hereditary. Now that is that was a cinematic experience of the year for me. You can like or dislike the ending, which I kind of went with, but I understood people's criticisms of it. But what led you up to that was such a performance by Toni Collette. Fantastic she was in that film. A Wes Anderson film in Isle of Dogs. Again, just give it more Wes Anderson. If you like his style, you like his films. If you like one of his, you like all of them generally. It's a great sort of animated film. The Old Man and the Gun is the one I actually saw at the very end of this year, and it's probably the film I probably have smiled at most in the cinema. It's such a charming film. It's a wonderful little film, The Old Man and the Gun, from director David Lowery, I think it is. And you had Black Klansman from Spike Lee. Again, such a, no pun intended, but such a biting comedic drama based on a true event, but probably just takes a bit too sort of closer to fiction, but it's still entertaining in the points it makes as well, politically, of course, and socially. And the final one I will mention as well is Teen Titans Go to the Movies. And I never watched Teen Titans, the original series, or the Teen Titans Go series, because I think I just about missed them in terms of my age bracket, to put it that way. But I went to this film, I saw the trailer, I thought, that looks like a very funny film. I went to see the film, it was bloody hilarious. The way it spoofs itself, its characters, it spoofs its genre, DC, Marvel and DC. The fact that a DC property has gone, look at the films that we have made in the last 5-6 years and how silly some of the moments are them. You gotta give them respect for some creative honcho somewhere going, let them do it. So Teen Titans Go to the Movies. If you like comic books, you will love that little comedic little gem. But yeah, those are my 5 honourable mentions of 2018. I thank you so much if you have stuck in this long for watching, because I didn't anticipate to go this flipping long. I apologise about this, but so I started off very, very slowly, and then I really got back into it again, mainly because I've not done a video in a whole year. But I do hope I will contribute something, particularly especially around the Oscar times regarding awards films. But thank you so much for watching. If you do want to share my video or subscribe to it, that'd be fantastic. Yeah, okay, so thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you very, very soon. Thank you very much, and goodbye.